for the word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money this week. Joining me now, UBS Financial Services Private Wealth Advisor Ali McCartney, Ruscliffe Capital CEO and Managing Partner Mike Murphy, and Kingsview Wealth Management CIO and Fox News contributor, Scott Martin. First up, Ali, let's get straight to you. Stimulus stumbles right now, but this market is expecting something, and there are so many people out there who do need those checks.
Yeah, you were talking about that earlier on. I heard when you talked about the numbers coming down for spending and personal savings coming up. So the proposed bill that is, I guess, just been vetoed is about 4% of annual GDP. And that's really important because we basically need a bridge until vaccination, especially with the rollbacks that we're seeing. So interesting to see the Democrats and the administration on the same side of this. Funny also to see that the market begins its Santa Claus rally even as this stumbles. I think that there's probably this look through to the fact that this gets done, and this is more of a negotiating style or tactic that the world is used to where Trump is concerned. But we're definitely going to need a bridge until mass vaccination, which is looking like mid to end second quarter of the next year.
Mike Murphy, we're also watching the Georgia Senate races very closely because you've got a market that's pricing in split government here. If we should see a change there, if we should see the incoming Biden administration with more power than anticipated, would Wall Street scale back this rally in early 2021?
Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning.
I think they could, but I think right now the market's looking past that. You know, we talked a lot about Trump losing and Biden coming in and how bad that would be for the markets. But right now, I think the markets are looking really at technology. They're looking at how underlying earnings are supporting the prices up at these levels. So Georgia's important, don't get me wrong, but even if Democrats get more control, the markets are going to figure that part out. They're going to figure out what higher taxes mean. Large S&P 500 companies are going to figure out how to keep more of their earnings, and the markets are going to get past it. So although it's important, I think from an investing standpoint, I wouldn't put too much into it.
All right, Mike, I want to stick with you for a second because we're watching the taking down potentially of Jack Ma's empire. The Chinese government launching this antitrust investigation into the retail giant Alibaba for this alleged monopolistic practices that we've been seeing while the country's central bank is planning to meet with Alipay parent Ant Group about implementing some new financial regulations. This coming after President Xi Jinping squashed Ant Group's blockbuster IPO last month. You know, you're looking at what's happening in China, specifically with Alibaba, and also potentially antitrust investigations into big tech here. There's so much happening, and it's all happening simultaneously, which is a bit surprising.
Yes, it is. And it's a good segue from what can happen if a government gets too strong and is anti-business or wants to take a business down. You know, in China, we've seen this for a long time. Jack Ma has spoken out against the Chinese Communist Party, and that's not a good thing to do there. So they're coming after him. They're coming after Alibaba. The stock here in the U.S. is trading down almost 8% today. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out because Alibaba has become such a global empire. But I look at what happened here in the United States, where we have free government. The government has looked at Google, for instance, and Google has gotten past that every single time and continued to move higher. So it'll be interesting to see what the Chinese Communist Party does to Jack Ma and Alibaba, how it affects other businesses there in China. But I think it's more isolated to them and their government, and I wouldn't expect too much of an impact here on the U.S. markets.
Scott, I want to bring you in here as well because we're waiting for news coming out of Europe from, you know, potentially this Brexit deal sort of narrowing down and honing in on and defining some of the trade issues that we'll be watching in 2021. The markets, European markets, were flat as we're waiting for that. You know, it is a shortened trading session here, and I'm wondering what you think is going to be made of that news. We are expecting UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to comment on that deal at any moment.
Short-term impact, Jackie, probably some volatility. I mean, gosh, you know, Brexit. What year is this? Like 2016? I mean, come on. We're still working out deals from things 4 or 5 years ago. This thing's dragging on like COVID. So I think overall, though, Jackie, with respect to trade deals going forward, as the Biden administration has commented on briefly so far, look, we're going to be involved in global trade. Many countries around the world, or all of them, frankly, because global supply chains are so intertwined these days, and there's business across the globe. So they'll work out trade deals, just as, say, the Biden administration has talked about how they're going to work out new trade deals. And I think overall, the impact is going to be more the fact that we're going to actually have maybe some final ruling on this thing, which started back in 2016.
And I just want to mention that Reuters is reporting it could take several more hours before we hear about this. They are still working out those final details. So it'll be something that we'll be watching today, even though it is Christmas Eve. Allie McCartney, I want to go back to you because as we talked about stimulus and spending, you mentioned that Santa Claus rally, a big spike expected this year in online sales for the retailers. Do you think it'll be enough to offset the reduction in foot traffic that we're seeing in stores? I mean, here in New York City, you walk out on Fifth Avenue and it's a shell of what it would normally look like.
Yeah, New York, which is where I'm from as well, is probably not the right place to look to get a feel for the country. But if you think about it, e-commerce is up about 29% this year. The, digital adoption has been booming and booming and booming and moving into the future. But obviously this year kickstarted that. Look, this is a really tough time because what we've done is we've really looked through all of the issues that we're seeing, which include a more virulent strain, which include more infections, which included some job numbers that were really scary because they told a story that was not a recovery story. But everybody knows it's temporary. So the hope, again, is that this stimulus, whether it's $600, whether it's $2,000, that it is not too little, too late. And the question also becomes that with the Fed having increased liquidity and their balance sheet by 75%, by $3 trillion since March, with a second round of checks with unemployment benefits, which are part of this, which is very important, staying increased to the end of the new year, is can we keep these spending numbers up from where they were in November and take the place of the foot traffic that we are also desperately missing?
Allie McCartney, Mike Murphy, Scott's going to stay with us, but thank you guys all for your insight this morning.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Same to you. Much more ahead.